Hello everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. Today's webinar topic that I'll be covering is intelligent forms and workflow management, and how we can help you move beyond paper in minutes. My name is Greg Schmidt. I'll be showing and walking through the presentation today on how easy it is to automate any of your forms and workflows inside of your organization. And also I'll be showing how easy it is to have anyone really create these dynamic forms and sophisticated workflows without really having to do any coding at all. It's all done through what we call our citizen-based developer interface, which allows you to drop and drag the different elements and reusable items from the palette and build these forms. Workflows can be built as well to be able to set up automatic reminders and escalations and different kinds of levels of approvals inside of there. So, and some of that can be dynamic dependent on values that might be in the form. So a use case would be like PO requests and different amounts and approvals need to go to different directions and stuff like that. We have automatic validation and escalations and calculations built into the form capabilities as well. This really helps you to sort of streamline the process and avoid errors and get all the information you need the first time and not have to worry about, is the information correct that's being collected in the form? So the forms could automatically be set up with business rules and data validation fields inside of there to be able to streamline that process. Integrate into any of your business systems. So we can auto-populate forms. So think of bidirectional data pushes and pulls, from the forms, from your DB2 databases or SQL databases. Save documents directly to the backend secure archive. So you can retrieve those later on for access and then link to those to your business system. Again, my name is Greg Schmidt. I'm a senior solutions engineer here at Help Systems in the document forms and automation brand, and also in the SQL BI brand here. I've been, helping companies automate their data and document processes and also streamline a lot of their, I'll say, cumbersome and often inefficient processes with the technology that we provide. I also provide strategic planning for digital transformation of data and documents, really to help guide, companies within best practices, and then also help them in an implementation process, more of a phased approach implementation process to get off the ground running and streamline that process. I have over a decade's worth of experience in the IBMI report and data distribution and robotic process automation technology brands as well. Here's a quick look at the agenda before I get started. I'm just going to do just a quick introduction overview of what we do here from the document automation brands here, or document forms automation brands here at Help Systems. And then I'm going to jump right into some of the trends we're seeing in the industry, and then get into how we can help you in your organization, and then cover some of those use cases that we'll do there. I'll be doing a live demonstration. I want to do a large portion of today's presentation in the live demonstration, because really walking through, digitizing forms, going through those existing forms, workflow and enforcement, internal and external workflows, how does that work? And then also on the automation side of things, how do we integrate into ERP systems to be able to collect that information and then also collect those forms for a lot of cases, it's regulatory and compliance purposes and stuff like that as well. And then we'll finish up with some Q&A at the end and go through that process there. And then so feel free to enter any questions that you may have as we're going through the presentation here today, and I will address them towards the end of the webinar. Please select all presenters, so all the questions are directed to me. And I will also plan to complete this session in about 45 minutes, I think we have today. But there's a lot of great content, and I'll do my best to keep on track and go from there. But if I do run over for any reason, you will be getting at the end of this webinar, I think in a day or so, or at the end of the day, you'll receive a link that you can share with anyone in your organization who could not attend today's session, or if you missed anything and you want to rewatch anything. The wave of digital transformation is sweeping through industries and organizations, and it has never been stronger than it is now in 2022. And its benefits are reshaping organizations and the way they compete in their industries. Digital transformation phases are not only digital or are not only data and document driven, they are also about the network communications technology you are using in a larger strategy in your organization. From manufacturing to distribution, retail, healthcare, government organizations across the world are discovering the benefits of digital transformation. The journey, milestones, and rewards of digital transformation vary between leaders, teams, and companies. Many start with the easiest step towards digitization, getting rid of paper. Some of it is it's really that decentralizing decision making and using mobile apps as well to be able to do that. So in that process of getting rid of paper, it's about how those are delivered to individuals, right? So being able to not only from a web browser, but a mobile app to be able to get to that information. So that's a large part of digital transformation and what we help with and provide to our customers is that digital transformation of being able to collect documents, but also that the forms management portion of that and not having to create the paper and do digital processes inside of there. And a big net result of digital transformation is my number one thing, right? It's is digital first thinking, right? How can we get digital first? How can we go as paperless as possible inside of an organization and be able to empower our knowledge workers? Give them the technology they need to be able to work from different locations, especially nowadays. With that, we're not going back to the old normal, right? We have that new normal out there, but being able to provide them the business or give them to be able to do their business where they need to be able to, if that's from home, from an office, remote locations as they're traveling, but really that business agility part. All right here. So we have been helping companies for decades now on their digital transformation and automation journeys. Our mission really is to help streamline the way companies, create, capture, securely manage, and distribute their business documents, processes, and business data. On the document and forms management side, we really been helping with, like I said, document management, forms management, document creation and delivery. So taking and creating POs and invoices and biz statements and business documents and saving those into the system, but also delivering those to people, right, electronically. And then really a large part of what we do is, if you think about that last one, number 4 there, is the accounts payable and receivable automation. And it's not only limited to that, right? Those are the 2 biggest areas, but HR is huge in that sort of piggybacks upon, some of the implementations is, to be able to automate some of those processes. So if you think about these categories, these are where we really help companies, like I said, create, capture, and securely manage and do distribution of the documents electronically. Now let's move on to some of the current trends that we are seeing in the industry. And these trends have been building. If you watch some of my trend webinar at the beginning of the year, these trends are moving pretty fast, actually. In 2022, because things are getting back to some kind of normal, right? And as we walk through some of these trends here, you'll see that some of the different kinds of movement that's going on. But we've noticed over the past few years, digital disaster recovery is a huge one. High availability. Right, being able to, that was one of the things that really got kicked up here in the last couple of years is being able to have that disaster recovery and be able to, move the different systems that they need to. But a lot of that is around intelligent processes, right? So you'll see inside of here we got departmental process automation, a lot of what we do, right? Workflow enforcement, intelligent forms and stuff, what we're talking about today. But that's really around that digital transformation effort, is getting that information easily accessible to people that might not be inside of the 4 walls, right? If that's customers or if that is, employees that need access to that. And then one of the, I'll say it's probably even growing and going to the forefront on this one, is the secure access and retention for departmental documents. There's so many companies today that have created what we call a digital mess, right? They've created it because that's what they had to do, during the pandemic and all the stuff going on. They had to create these create certain processes and get them done so people had access, right? But what happens is now we need to go back and do that cleanup process, right? And really use a strategy around that. There was really no, it wasn't really an easy strategy to put in place at that time, so it's easier just to drop documents into a folder or something like that. But there's no security. For compliance and regulatory purposes, they need to go back and put some of that stuff into secure access locations and put retention policies and stuff on there for different kinds of documents. So these are sort of the trends that we're seeing in those different categories. But if I was pretty much to put all these trends under one high-level category, I'd call it remote enablement, right? So remote enablement for users to access forms and documents and business systems to be able to do their jobs more efficiently from anywhere they need to be able to do their work. I think that's a strong statement there. Now, looking at some of the trending industries that we've been working with in the past years, like manufacturing is always a big one, right? Distribution is always a big one for us. Insurance, healthcare, the education sector, banking and finance, and the public sectors and government have been coming up as well with those inside the organization. All right, let's move on here. Bringing digital business agility to your organization and being able to take control of your business forms and data is on the wish list for many organizations, large or small, in today's business world. With WebDocs Forms Management, we can help you with taking your paper and other business documents and creating easy to use web-based forms. And as you will see today, it is not just making forms easy to fill out, but it's also easy to create and deploy them with no programming required. That is a key piece to the statement, and what I want to show today is, again, easy to create and deploy with no programming. Business rules can be applied from any form to enforce how data is filled out in the form and guide users in the data collection process. There's security in forms to enforce how users have access to certain data and sections in the form, and if they need to sign or do certain things at certain intervals in there. Internal and external access to forms. So we can have internal and external access to forms, anonymous and user-based ones. We can integrate into your databases and ERP or other lines of business systems. So again, you don't have to rekey that data, right? So if we collect the data in the form, we want to be able to validate that information, but also push that to a business system or push it to a staging table where the business system can integrate into. Or if you're using an RPA solution, you can actually use the data, and we can export like XML or the data to a database, and the RPA solution can pick that up and process that through. So you do have some different options there as well. Now, workflow enforcement. Establish business rules and steps for approvals and reviews. Very easy to do, and I'll show that here today with some different ones from, I'll call it very simplistic to more complex, but I'll say not really sophisticated workflows, but just a little bit of complexity to them that it might take a business rule or something like that through building the rule builder, but really not that hard to do. Enforce the path on where the data needs to be filled out in the form. So this is a really cool part. So you can enforce on where it needs to go inside of an organization with the workflow, but I can enforce how it needs to be filled out and what needs to be filled out when. So really cool, functionality in the application to be able to enforce that from a business side. Time-based escalations at each step of a workflow to remove the, any of those bottlenecks and uphold your, service level agreements inside of your organization and also with your customers, depending on what kind of form you're doing. This really removes the need to follow the forms around in the data collection process. The system will push it forward or push it back or re-notify or do something with it to get it through the process in the time it's allowed. So very, very business rule orientated in the background there. Now, when it comes to automation, automated workflows, help remove the thought process from users, right? And bring the power back to the business. Users don't need to know the process behind it to make sense or know what they need to fill out. They just get displayed the information they need, and we'll pass that information over through the system and give that information for them to fill out. This really helps with the need to enforce it for regulatory and compliance purposes, right? Now you can show your auditors and everything, this is what our process is, but here's who has access to it and here's what they need to do at each of these steps. So it's a really nice way to provide that to the auditors and stuff like that, and also just a peace of mind that stuff is getting done correctly inside of an organization. Forms automation can also help guide users on what they need to fill out. So I already talked about this a little bit, but so the automation part can, you can enter in something, a unique value, and then we can pre-populate or repopulate the information in the background with some of that data element structure. One of the cool things, and I'll show this in the demonstration here too, is automatic creation and fill in PDF documents. And that's at 2 levels, meaning that we create a PDF document for storage purposes in the background that can be sent out of the system or put into the secure repository. But we also can take your current PDF fillable documents, and maybe they're government-based documents that can't be reproduced, right? We can actually take those and import those into the form and fill those as an output option. We have a really cool feature inside of the application to do PDF filling function. Send completed forms and data where it needs to go as part of the automation workflow. Data and the form can go in different directions, right? The form can go into the system, to the archive. You could send a copy to someone if you want to. The data might go another direction, but we can facilitate that whole entire process there. We even have capability at any point in a workflow where someone might not need to interact with the workflow, but they might want an email with what that section was filled out with. So a lot of times as things are going through, IT might say, they might, like in an onboarding process, we might invoke IT at a certain point in there to say, hey, I still got to go through some process here, but it is approved but I need a laptop or need some kind of hardware. So we can send a notification or some of that information that was collected in the form to a different department or user. Within this solution, it really breaks down into 3 main functions inside of the product itself, right? To be able to solve these different business problems. The first one is, easy to create forms with no programming required, right? So citizen-based developer, drag and drop capability, reusable controls, and one really cool feature is unlimited forms. We don't limit you on how many forms you can have, right? And workflows you can have. You can have as many as you want, from that standpoint. And then the back end of that is really important too, is secure archive and repository for documents of forms. So we can integrate into, like Active Directory or SAML to be able for authentication and stuff like that. And we have file system connectors, but that secure repository is really cool because it gives you the capability to also collect forms in there, but we give you other tools outside of the forms management, just in the document management side for that secure repository to drag and drop documents in, scan documents in if you need to. We really bring a lot of value to other business use cases that you might have. So you can easily expand the solution, outside of forms and start and stay inside of that digital transformation process you have, and start to collect other kinds of documents inside the organization. And again, I like to highlight this always again, even though I just talked about some of this, is the connectors in the background. We have connectors for web docs, the DMS, so the document management system, Active Directory connectors, SAML connectors, file system connectors, and these are all part of the application when you purchase it, right? We do have an RPA connector as well, so we connect with one of our sister brands, Automate, to be able to do some of that RPA automation in the background. So you do have that capability there, and then those database connectors. And this is, again, any database you have a driver for, you can do some access with. Big ones that we work with a lot is DB2, MySQL, and then Microsoft SQL. Those are the big ones there. But any database that you have access to, we can actually use that in our process. WebDocs Forms Management offers your users the full experience, right? So build a form inside of our application. You can access it and deploy and access from any device. It is smart enough. It is a full responsive design. It will conform. And you'll even see in the demonstration as I show, it will actually change the form a little bit to give the best user experience to the user depending on the device they're coming from. So that's really cool. So you don't have to do that. And there's a design mode inside of here too that you can actually use the form on any of those devices without having those devices in your hands. And remember, it's not all just about forms again, right? It's about the workflow that you can build in to facilitate your data collection and approval process. Built into the core application, you can use the workflow system not only to enforce how the data is being filled out, but also how the process and enforce the flow behind the form and where it needs to go inside of the organization. This can also aid you in your compliance and regulatory efforts that your company needs to enforce by being able to define approval and review flows and document that process. And a second option for workflow, it allows you to go a step deeper, but not only having a forms workflow, but a document-based workflow that integrates with each process during the document's life cycle. This will allow you to have a form-based workflow for the data collection process, but after that has been completed, you can update the business system with the data, and the document can be created on the background and passed to the document workflow in the WebDocs document repository. So it's a really cool scenario that we see is usually like a data collection process, and then someone might not have access to the form system, and they don't need access to the form system because they just need the completed document to do something. So it might be they're running that process around through maybe a management HR kind of a process or a PO requisition kind of process, and then we kick a document out into a workflow. So a really powerful piece there. There's so many use cases too that we run into. I mean, I have multiple demo systems that I do, and I have to clean them up every once in a while because I get so many forms examples out there. I don't know which ones to use during demonstrations. But the solution can pretty much solve any kind of need for digitizing a form, and then also sometimes it's also just working with the workflow, and then being able to collect some data during that workflow. But expense management, contract management's been really huge today, and I'll show some examples of that. Quality control and QA forms, inspection forms and stuff like that. Sales order process, purchase order process. Human resources and onboarding processes have been huge because of the document or forms process you need to do to be able to collect the data and create documents, but then the secure storage in the background to be able to house that information. Online hiring forms, credit applications, companies have been deploying to their websites. This next one is actually interesting. It's a price change and update form to the CRM and ERP systems. Some of the ERP and CRMs have complex backends to them, and you can't always customize, or you can, but it's very costly, right? So a lot of times, and we can integrate into any application. So being able to create a form to be able to route things around and enforce a workflow, not just a form process, but maybe I do a price change and I need to update something in the CRM, but before it gets updated, that data gets filled out, and then the form can go through a workflow process, and at the end of that approval, we can update the business system with that. So that's been really helpful here as well. And then we also have seen a lot of like customer onboarding processes and stuff like that. Being able to create customer accounts need to go through some kind of review and approval or just a notification process, but we can do that as well. All right, I'm gonna switch over to the live demo here. We'll have some good time here for the live demo, and then we'll get into some questions here. But what the WebDocs forms management is all web browser based, right? So being able to access forms inside of a workflow or access forms to be able to create them is all done through the web interface. And dependent on the login that you're using, right? I can have a designer. Mine is designer, but it could have been Greg at my forms management system, and then my password, or it could be my Active Directory username and password, or SAML connection, depending on what you're using. But a really cool feature inside of here is I can have what we call my projects. My projects are folders with workflows and forms in them, right? And then each user inside the system, as they're part of a workflow, will have what we call my tasks. My tasks is where you will go to be able to access your forms. So you could have quite a few different forms that you might be doing approval on or reviewing on, but it's your workflow inbox, right? It gives you the capability to interact with that document in a flow and be able to add information, update information. Now, again, this form is more open based here to be able to do data entry on, but there could be things as it goes through a workflow process that we're locking down certain fields and functions in here. So it's a really cool feature to be able to have security levels at sections and also field level structures inside of here. I'm going to go back to my projects here. I want to show a couple different ones, and I'm starting with some of the, I'll call it more simplistic ones even, right? Meaning that I'm going to go into my folder here, but in this one here, and I'm going to show the form, and then I want to go into show you the design of these forms here too. But in this form here, this is the test mode here, right? For inside of here, and you'll see that up on top that I can actually see what it looks like on a desktop and laptop. I can see what it looks like on an iPad. What's it going to look like and how's it going to feel to that end user, and all the way down to a smartphone profile. So it sort of shows you how it reconforms that form into those different structures, right? So a really cool function there. But you'll see here, I have upload capability. This is really cool because if I'm coming from a desktop, it's going to automatically go to a file system, right? But I can enable a control inside of here to be able to say, hey, if I'm coming from a mobile device, it does not have a file system, go to the camera roll or just pop open the camera so I can take a picture and attach it. So a really cool feature there to be able to be mobile enablement there. Process, like this one here, it says process invoice to the intelligent capture system, yes or no. If I say yes, it's just going to push it there. If I say no, it's going to give me more information that I need to do for indexing purposes. That's a really cool form that some of our customers use to be able to initiate from a user when they get something to go through that approval process or process it through their normal process inside the organization. So that's more of a simplistic form with a business rule right inside of there. Now, from the other standpoint, even more simplistic, right? We have forms that are more like this, right? Just simple little upload forms that just upload a document and push it to the system. That's all they need to do. And this could be something on a website. It could be something on an internal portal that they need to be able to do. But you'll see here is the designer. So I'm in the design mode here in this case, right? And this is designing a form. So if I need to, open that form up and do other things with the form, this is a very powerful tool. Remember, there's no coding that needs to be done in this case, right? It's just basically dropping controls in and setting up properties. So maybe if I wanted to add a drop-down menu inside of here, I can update, what the drop-down menu says. But if I click on this control, you'll see that I can add and modify the different options inside of here. I can make things required. I can hide and show, make things visible at certain points inside of a workflow. So if there's something like in a workflow or a dropdown I need that selection to be done, I could put that as required, and it's going to change that so they can't go by that without doing it. But this allows you to be able to do those configuration pieces here. Now you'll see also in the designer, so if I click on this add files option, again, anything that we click on and inside of here from different controls, it's going to give me the capability to configure them. Each of the controls have a little bit of a difference on what you can restrict and what you can do inside of there, like hint and help text, like file uploads, max and minimum sizes, what kind of file restrictions, what kind of files will you accept inside the organization, right? So we can do different things like that. And then, like I said, that enable camera roll function is right here, so we can enable that if it's coming from a mobile device. So a really cool feature there. But these are all the different palette controls over here. A lot of these are field level structures, and some of these are visual elements, meaning like panels and tabs and tables and stuff like that we can do inside of here. One of the things I always I want to make sure I don't forget to talk about this, is the capability to do templates. So we have template capability. You can create a base template and start from a template always, right? But we also have what we call custom controls. Custom controls are controls you build into a form and you want to reuse them on other forms. Like a good example of that is like build to and shipping addresses and state and stuff like that, where you got a lot, like in this case here, I can take this from the custom tab that I used on another form and drag it over here. But that way I don't have to recreate this state dropdown every single time and put all the states in there. Waste my time doing that. So build once, use many times kind of a process there. It's a really cool process. But that's the designer structure here. There's different things here, and we'll cover a couple of these in just a second, but rules, PDF mapping, and then there's settings. You can see inside here we can go through different settings and structures and stuff like that as well. So really, really cool process there. Another form I want to show here, and we'll talk a little bit about workflow here in a second, but is on the this is the claims forms capture here, right? So being able to create a simple document like this, and this is another business rule, right? Saying, is there an existing claim, yes or no? If I say no, or if I say yes, the claim number comes up, right? So being able to collect that claim, collect that information, collect different documents as they're uploading documents into the system, giving them a drop-down list to be able to provide that process. So a really cool feature there. But a lot of times inside of a process like this, you need to be able to build workflow function, right? So being able to create these different workflows, and workflows could be, like I said, could just be a single flow, could be a single process, but collecting, someone comes in here, collects a document, there's an internal review process, and there's a new claims creation process, right? And that's all dependent on if someone said yes or no to that question. So we can set up different kinds of security or different kinds of levels of inside of here, preconditions inside of here. So we can add preconditions at in between any step to say, if it meets a certain requirement, kick it up this way or kick it over this way, kind of a feel. If you see, if I click on each of these steps, goes into more settings and configurations. This is now where we can set up different user assignments here. So we can set up who has access to the form, or at a user level or a role level. Or if it's an external person, we can actually put an email address in there, or a variable we can pass from the form to here as well. We can set up rejections. We can set up escalation processes. This is really cool. I was talking about earlier in some of the slides, is the escalation process gives you the capability to be able to set up different functions here. So if I go ahead and add an escalation, I can say, hey, if it's not performed within a certain amount of time, or performed by, or any of those, we can actually set up that different kinds of actions happen and then send out notifications as well. So it's a way, again, a way to enforce from a business side, from just a standard SLA internally to a customer SLA, or for regulatory and compliance purposes. If you're using it for, we have a lot of customers using it for corrective actions or something like that, right? They need to do something in a certain amount of time for legal purposes. So you can do different things like that inside here, but these allow you to be able to set those different functions up. And even this, this precondition here, pretty easy. There's no code that's done here. It's actually a little wizard that comes up that says, hey, if the existing claim is set to no, then I need to, drop this down, to that next level then. So it's pretty cool to be able to do that in the process, and do that from an ease of use too, and no coding structures. All right, here, I want to get to just a couple other ones here. Contract management's another big one for us. If you see this has been something that's been coming up, and we've been able to help facilitate this. And this is facilitated in a couple different ways, right? So a lot of times it's just getting the documents into the system, so we can actually get just a collection process, right? So being able to index and put this in the system and answer, certain questions to make sure that things have been done, and then collect those different documents and then file them in the system. So we have that capability there, to be able to facilitate that. But then we might have a different kind of a process where we need to facilitate the filling out internally and externally, right? So we might have someone initiates it internally, it gets sent out to a vendor, and then it comes back in from the vendor for internal review, and then at the end of that process, an email gets sent. So we have those different kinds of processes, and there could be a form like this behind it, to be able to facilitate that with a checklist and some of that information, add the contract, vendor's email address, and then get that a signature and approval. And then we can have internal only sections inside of here to be able to set up some of the other information like start date, end date, and when we need to kick them back into a process for review and stuff like that after that term. But that's there as well. So we have different processes like that, that we can facilitate. I want to get into an advanced workflow one here so you can sort of see that. But an advanced workflow one could be, it could be many different things, right? But an advanced workflow could just be, and this is, it's sort of advanced, right? I mean, it's not really that hard to do, but it's got more steps and stuff in it, right? Meaning that there's different kinds of limits and approvals inside of here. If it's more than, a certain amount, we're going to go this direction. If it's more than 10K, then it triggers another event to go through another step. So there's different things that we can do inside of here from that workflow standpoint. But we also, from the preconditions again, we can also put other things in here, like if grand total equals this, and and the approver is a certain approver, I might have different levels of approval. We can put those conditions in, and then you can adjust the logical expressions inside of here to be able to facilitate some of those different steps in here. So very, very powerful piece there, from that standpoint. And I'm going to get over here. Okay, one other one I wanted to show, so I think this is very important, is the PDF filling function, right? I was talking about we create PDFs on the back end, right, to be able to kick out. Inside of the process, we can also take, like in this case here, this is a W4. This does not look like the W4, but it's asking questions to fill in the W4, right? This is really cool because we can set up, different rules to be able to help people fill out this information and guide them to that process. But then on the back end of that, we can upload the template and then map the fields from the form that we created to the PDF form. So in this case here, you'll see I can actually click on a field and actually tell it what field in the form that I want it to map to. So that's a really popular piece there, from the PDF form mapping. So any of your compliance forms and stuff like that that you may have that you can't recreate the PDF, you have to leave them in the normal state. We can actually build those workflows to be able to facilitate that process. And how that looks inside the form, and let me just open this up. And then I'm just going to put some information in here, so bear with me here. I've got a lot of required fields. But we can fill out this information inside the form. This is really cool because this is an example of, so say that I fill out something and I filled it out wrong and I put an extra digit in there and I tried to go off of there, boom, invalid format, right? So we can actually trigger those different events. Same thing with email address. We can format those certain ways. I'm just going to put this in here. And then the state dropdown, we can make this really easy to do. I could say that. And you'll see here, I'm going to grab a signature so we can do wet-based and pin-based signatures. on all devices, so it's really cool. Automatically sign and date. And then for legal purposes, we always need to make sure that, if we're creating a document in the background with this data, and this is not the original document, you always want to make sure that you give them the capability to certify that of accuracy, right? So they can actually click on a form view here, and it's going to pop open that PDF with the data filled out in the form. So they can actually see that information. So all that information that I filled out, you'll see it's actually populated into the form for them to be able to get to. So it's a nice feature there from the form side of things. My form is still open. There it is. And then they can say, yep, I verify that, and then they can submit, and it's going to go into the other process then. Inside the process, we can also set up messages in the background too, or redirect someone after a form is filled out. So that's another thing that we can do. There's a ton of features to the application. I did not cover every single thing that we can do, but that is, sort of like I said, the forms management piece there from that standpoint. And again, really quickly, backend archive. All forms and stuff are collected into the system, so you can search for them, and then they'll go into secure repositories inside of the WebDoc system so that you can search and access them later on too. So someone might want to come into the system and actually search for something, in 6 months, year later, or even 2 days later after it's been filled out. They can fill out that information and then retrieve that for compliance purposes here. So the backend archive, and then this can be expanded to the backend archive to be able to scan documents in and drag and drop, electronic documents in. It is a non-proprietary system, so Word documents, Excel, emails, all that good stuff for correspondence. We can house inside the system. All right, let me switch over there. And let me just move this out of the way. And as I'm doing this, feel free to enter any of your questions into the chat window still. And take a little time for QA here. We got a few minutes left. Again, I probably won't get to all the questions here. Oh, there's a lot of questions. That's good. That's good. It means everybody's listening. Awesome. If I don't get to all these today, we will follow up after. I'm just going to scan through these really quick here. Some of these I did cover during the presentation. Some might have missed or joined a little bit late. I wasn't watching how many people came in, but is there a limit to the number of forms you can create and deploy? The answer is no. There is no limit set on how many forms you can create or even workflows you can create in the system for those different forms. The only thing you are limited to is the number of concurrent users you have licensed in the software. And remember, we can have different levels of those users, right? Different packages, but we can also have anonymous forms users as well to be able to do that. Is there any extra cost to the connectors and Active Directory and SAML and database connectors for the solution? No, those are all, there's no extra cost. All the connectors are part of the core package and are available to you at any time to be able to deploy. So you're good with that. Training available. Yes, we do have training available. Training is very easy and very, we have what we call a getting started package. And it's highly recommended, right? We have some users that just get the application and it's very intuitive. They can go and do what they want and create what they need to by themselves. I always recommend the getting started package because it shows you the other stuff that you might need to be able to deploy in a form, right? It might not just be a simple deployment, meaning that's just a form, but you might want to create workflow with some other kinds of business rules or stuff like that. So it's always nice to be able to do that training process inside of there. All right, I'm gonna go through these a little bit. Let's see if I get this right. When the completed forms are being saved into the backend archive, can you also save them to other systems? The answer is yes. So many times we're saving documents to archives, and in some use cases we are emailing a copy to someone, a finished copy, or dropping them into another directory for it to be picked up from another system if you're using another system. But yep, you sure can. All right, and I'm going to try to finish up on time here, so I'm going to leave all the other questions out there. And come and we'll follow up after the webinar here. But there's still a lot of great ones out there. I want to thank everyone for taking the time to be able to put those out there for me to look at. But I just want to thank everyone for attending the webinar here today and bearing with me going through this process here, and hope it was very useful to see how you can get organized and start to move beyond the paper processes by using an intelligent the intelligent web docs forms and workflow management solution by Help Systems. If you have any additional questions, feel free to reach out to myself or our anyone on the document and forms management sales team here at Help Systems, and we'll be happy to schedule a free consultation or a live one-on-one demonstration. I'll even be happy to mock up a form of yours as well if you want, so you can sort of see how it would look inside of the system. You will also be receiving a recording link after the live webinar here today to share with anyone in your organization who could not attend today's session, or by any chance you want to rewatch anything that you might have missed if you had to get up. Thanks again for attending today's webinar. Have a great day and enjoy the rest of your week.